The economy was the number one thing in the American-dominated world, which is coming to an end. Greetings, this is Eugene the Philosopher, the greatest living philosopher after the unfortunate passing of Quentin Robert de Nameland, who has been the greatest living philosopher before me. Now, in my previous video, specifically the video called How Europe Will Rule the World, I'll obviously link it in the description, I say that, well, Europe will rule the world. I mean, after the falling of American hegemony that we keep talking about on this channel, Europe will emerge as the world's dominating power well, in the future, alright? And some people are countering this with an argument like, well, how can you say that Europe will rule the world if European economy is not looking very good? You know, we have basically like two major superpowers economically right now, which is the USA and China, and so people, like, reasonably, within this framework of reasoning, forgive me for this tautology, are saying that China will be the next world hegemon, alright? Even though the European Union is actually very close to both China and America, it's still, like, well, it's not the number one at the very least, alright? And to this, well, basically this video of mine that you're currently watching is supposed to be the answer to this question. And briefly, like if you want TLDR or TLDW, too long didn't watch, right? Answer, it is that putting the economy as the main metric for the world hegemon is actually the symptom of being in the phase of American domination. So basically, only American domination of the world is putting the economy on the first, the top of the list of what a country needs to be the world hegemon, basically. That's my short answer, and for longer answer, again, please keep watching this video. So, before we understand, like, what Europe's main thing may be, for America was economy, as we've just discussed, what Europe's main thing may be in its world non-hegemony, rather, as I've called it in this previous video of mine that I've already mentioned. Let's talk about the previous hegemons, even before America, and what their main tools for hegemony or for world domination were. Okay, I'm not going to go into too much detail about history, like you may watch my video, Middle Ages didn't exist, or how was it called, like the coming triumph of new chronology or something like that. Like there I give some more ideas of mine and some other people about history, like Middle Ages specifically and things like that. However, to simplify, we've had the Roman Empire dominating the world. Then we've had like a dark ages where nothing is really known. Then we have Spain dominating the world. Then we have France. Then we have Britain. And then we have America finally. And we're at the very end of this segment of American domination. So I assume, like this is my kind of a supplementary hypothesis, a lemma if you wish, that every next hegemon has to have some sort of a know-how in terms of how, like, what is different about it? What's their strongest thing with respect to everyone else? Which, again, allows them to dominate everyone else, alright? So my claims would be here, like if we examine this timeline that I've just shown you, that Italy, or Roman Empire really, I mean Italy only appeared in 19th century in the first place, right? But the Roman Empire, what was its know-how? Like how did it dominate the known world at that time? I mean known to Europeans at the very least, alright? Well, my claim would be that its know-how was logistics and law, okay? So it was the Romans who built the roads, it was the Romans who built the aqueducts, it was the Romans who kept building everything everywhere all at once, you know, so, roughly speaking. And they've also had the law. So not only they built like physically, you know, architecturally and like logistically, they also built like societally, you know. They've established the law, which was incredibly effective, very complex, and actually kind of cool. So cool that, you know, all the lawyers are still studying it, like God knows how much years later, how many years later. Also, they've had legions. Like, why was Roman army so effective? It's not only because, you know, tactically they've had this famous manipulate, whatever is it called in English, but it's actually not that effective. I mean, they've had some defeats, for example, from Hannibal in Parthia, like Crassus got defeated, etc., etc. So manipular tactics, in itself is not the answer. Like, why was the Roman army so effective? What was the answer? Is exactly the legions, the logistics, you know. What is a legion? It's a walking city, essentially. Like, if you watch the movie Mortal Engines, you know what I mean. It's literally a city that's moving. It's like 5,000 people, like, building a city here, and then in the morning they dismantle it and move it like 50 kilometers somewhere else and rebuild it again, right? That's what a legion is. It's a moving city, essentially, right? So yeah, Rome dominated through logistics and law. That would be my point. Then the Dark Ages we completely ignore. Then Spain emerges as the next hegemon. Again, what the timeline is not very important. Let's say 16th century, okay? Late 16th century, the Spain is the world hegemon. It rules at least half of the known world, all right? It's a huge world-spanning empire. And what was Spanish know-how? I would claim it's a Christianity, actually. I would claim that the Christian religion have played the crucial role, forgive me for this pun, again, in sort of establishing the Spanish Empire. I mean, you could argue in the comments, blah, 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 but everything else was just technical details, all right? But it was the Christianity, I think, that helped Spain to establish the world hegemony, all right? Then, around 1650s, actually, France became the world hegemon. And what made France the world hegemon is they actually had the biggest and the strongest continental army. By continental, I mean in Europe, all right? Like, they've had muskets, they've had like steel plates, steel armor, and things like that. So, yeah. That was a big thing. In fact, the army of France was so powerful, also like systems of fortifications, but that's again, it's all little details. Like, I'm talking about the main thing, alright? So the main thing of France was the biggest army, okay? It was so big, in fact, that even after Napoleonic defeats, like a century and a half later, right, it still had the biggest army in Europe, even after they've been defeated, you know. So, for example, in Congress of Vienna, you may watch the video by Historia Civilis. I'll actually link it in the description, which has a brilliant, like, breakdown of what happened during the Congress of Vienna. So, like, the Europeans were concerned, like the British, the Russians, the Austrians, the Prussians, they were trying to establish a peace treaty in such a way as not to offend France too much, because even though France lost, it still had the biggest army, all right? However, after the Waterloo, the British became the world hegemon. So France was defeated, actually, like, you know, almost completely. Not completely. They still were a major superpower in the world, but almost, all right? And Britain became the world superpower. What was the British main tool of world domination? Was the biggest fleet, all right? The answer is very simple. And what is the fleet? It's not just ships, all right? It's not just ships and cannons and even the crew. It's also all the infrastructure of the ports, of informants in the ports, of trading, of, you know, all these kinds of things, of like exchange, whatever, I don't know, markets, things like that. Like, it's a big thing, you know? When I say the fleet, it's not just the fleet. It's basically the whole thing. Like, the ships may only be like 25% of what I mean by the fleet, you know? All of this. But ships as well. Maybe actually first and foremost the ships, and later everything else, because again, militarily, nobody could compete with Britain on the seas, alright? Yeah, and after World War I, and especially after World War II, USA became the world's dominant superpower. And what was the American know-how? It was the economy. So that's how we come to this American world where all of us, unless you're like 100 years old already, have been born and raised in. And that's how we naturally assume that the economic might is the thing, you know, even though it's actually not it. I mean, it's just a symptom of us being in this perspective, in this American dominated world, is that we consider economy first and foremost. It's actually characteristic, right, that it was after the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, where basically American hegemony was almost already established. It was completely established after the bombs were dropped on Japan, right? But in 1944, where people were already understanding that America will be the #1 superpower after this, the concepts like GDP appeared, for example, right? It became the main tool for measuring a country's economy, and it became like a super world standardized thing, right? Like, this is the main competition now. We compete in our GDPs, right? And now, as you may know, Americans are already losing, even by their own metric, alright? So before that, you may remember there was a GNP concept of a gross national product, where you sum up, whatever, like, people of this nationality produced wherever they lived, right? And the Americans said, no, let's take GDP, gross domestic product, what you produce within your borders, you know. And why is it within your borders was very important? Because half of the world had colonies and America didn't, you know. So if you sum up what Britain produced, if you sum up like India, like Australia, Canada, whatever, this might have been much more than what America produced at that time. But the Americans have started this program of decolonization, basically to cut Europe's tentacles all over the world, right? Yeah, they basically kind of stretched this Monroe Doctrine, which initially stated that, you know, Europeans keep your hands out of Americas. Now they kind of stretched it on all over the world, basically. So the decolonization began. And that's why, by the way, the modern concept of a country is also American, because again, the majority of the countries, or, you know, in air quotes, that we know today are actually appeared in this American world in 1940s and later. And like the absolute majority of countries appeared in this time frame. So yeah, most of the countries are only a product or a byproduct or a subproduct, if you wish, of American dominated world in the first place. All right. And this focus on the economy actually made specifically these countries, America and the USSR, by the way, to dominate. All right. Why is that? Well, I mean, the 20th century, basically, you know, the bipolar world, etc., etc., etc. Like the first world, the second world, etc., etc. Like, why is that? Why is that the case? Well, because they are slave-based cultures, both America and Russia and USSR specifically. Like, it's very curious. Like, if you study the history of slavery and like compare it to the history of serfdom in Russian Empire, right? Like, it's very similar. Both were abolished in 1860s, actually, right? So these big continental-wide empires, the United States and the Soviet Union, where labor was the main thing, became the most dominant forces, because again, in the American-dominated world, economy was the thing, all right? So yeah. Oh, and by the way, like, if you look at the state of peasantry in Soviet Union, I mean, they didn't even had passports until 1970s. So, like, the majority of Soviet citizens weren't even citizens; they were still slaves, essentially. All right. So, yeah. All right. To sum this segment up, what did we talk about? We talked about how even asking the question, how can Europe rule the world when their economy is not the strongest, is already a symptom, not already, but still a symptom of American domination still lingering, right? The very question needs to be reformulated, rather, what Europe will rule with, if not the economy. That's the proper way to phrase this question. And again, kind of summing this segment up, my point was that the Roman Empire ruled with logistics and law, the Spanish Empire ruled with Christianity, the French Empire ruled with army, British Empire ruled with fleet, and the American Empire ruled with the economy. Now the question is, what comes next? And here, unfortunately, I don't have the answer, okay? I only have some vague attempts at formulating the answer, but I won't formulate it because it's only vague, alright? Like, what's gonna be the European paradigm of non-hegemony, as we've called it in this video, of how Europe will rule the world? So, I don't know. I have a vague suspicion it will have to do a lot with culture, maybe something like intelligence, like, again, maybe some, like, I don't know, it's really hard, we're completely guessing here, like, maybe AI will have something to do with it, in the sense that Europe will ban AI or something, and everything else, everywhere else it would be frequently used or something like that. I don't know. Like, I really don't know. But culture, probably, like, if you ask my opinion right now, I would say, but again, culture is a very vague word, right? But still, I would say that it's the culture. The next big thing would be the culture, right? But I still don't know how exactly, practically will this emanate, okay? But you can see that, for example, if you're an American conservative especially, you would say that, you know, some harmful things in our culture seems to be ruining us, right? That's the thought of American conservatives, and they're not wrong, actually. They're very correct. And this is, again, a point towards the idea that economy is not everything. Economy is just one thing, all right? And the very fact that we're still used to this idea that economy is everything is, again, is still a lingering influence of this dying American domination, okay? So, economy, in fact, again, if we look at the past, like the slave-based economies, like American and the Soviet, they were saying, we work more than the others, therefore we should have more stuff than the others. We should be on top, right? Whereas previously, people thought kind of backwards, like whoever works more is like an unhappy, miserable human being. You know, slaves work the most, actually, right? And people who chill out, they're the aristocracy, they're the rulers, right? So now, like, it's all backwards, right? Whoever, well, it's not exactly like this, but for dramatization, I can actually formulate it like this, like whoever works the least will become the ruler, you know. It's not quite like this, but I mean, to demonstrate the contrast, right? I formulated it like this. So let India, let China, let Africa, let even America work for us, say Europeans, and we'll just sit here in our clean, green, you know, peninsula of Europe, and everything will be fine, you know. Like, what do you think? Why are these measures keep being promoted, you know? Why are the centers of European cities, like the automobiles, getting kicked out? Well, because nobody likes automobiles. They make except Americans, of course, because they make cities unlivable. You can't walk there, you know. You can't do anything useful there when everything is paved and, you know, super fast cars are running about. So yeah, green energy again. We don't want pollution in Europe. Let pollution be in China. Let pollution be in America. It's fine. Let them work. You know? So yeah. And by the same token, some sort of new colonialism, I assume, would be reintroduced, right? So American world was decolonization, so fracturing of the world into many, mostly artificial, actually, countries. You know, how many conflicts arose in the Middle East, in Africa, again, because of this artificial divisions of ethnicities, of religious groups by country borders, you know, things like that. Like Kurds don't even have their own state still. You have the Israel-Palestine problem, etc., etc., etc. This is all the problems of American, like, nation-divided world, you know. And Europeans will actually, you know, they'll highlight this. They'll make the Americans answer for this. Believe me. So, yeah. But overall, the world will turn, like, what is European rule gonna be like? It's gonna be a global concentration camp, like, I'm afraid, right? So not only will have slavery by regions, so poorer countries will work. And I mean, you can already see this tendency, right? Poorer countries are working, and richer countries are doing whatever. You know, they're just trading Bitcoin or whatever, the useless crap, you know. Practically useless, of course. But yeah, so, but not only that, I'm afraid, like, not only regional differences would be, there would be class differences within the same societies, actually. So some sort of class segregation will take place, that is for sure. And, well, generally you may formulate it like this, that the USA have ruled the free world, and the EU, European Union, will rule the non-free world, unfortunately, you know, the world of slaves, something like that. So the lockdowns that we saw were just a practice session, you know. So there's a saying, it's not a saying, like a quote rather, by someone who I actually don't know the source, but I think it's brilliant. I may be completely, like, misunderstanding it, but that's how I remember it, and that's how I liked it. So that's how I'll give it to you, so that the real world is only for people who can afford it, you know? So it's just like, only the rich European aristocrats will be exactly that. They'll be chilling, they'll be doing whatever they want, they'll eat good food, etc., etc. Actually, speaking about food, but let me finish with this point first. Like, remember this lockdown thing where you sit on lockdown, you know, you peasants, whereas the elites are having parties, they're chilling, they're doing whatever they want. This is what I'm talking about, and this is our future. This is our present, actually, already, because, again, American hegemony is already dwindling, and we can see these signs of European non-hegemony creeping in, this sort of hypocrisy. But it's only hypocrisy if you assume that people are equal. And why are people equal? Because we assume them being equal, because that's what American Constitution says, right? But American Constitution doesn't matter anymore in European ruled world, right? So that's what I'm talking about. So if you assume that people are not equal, then, like, well, that's what is supposed to happen, right? Peasants are gonna work while the aristocrats are gonna have parties. And this is, again, this is our present already, and this is our future. So speaking again, returning to the food, it's the same brick in the same wall as the, you know, the clean energy, the cities free of automobiles. By the way, the planes would rarely fly, let's put it this way, because again, a huge air travel thing was the thing of American domination, right? Because America is sitting there on their own island, so to speak, but they want to travel the world, and how would they do it? On a plane, right? And now we already see Europe is banning many, like, how would you call it? Well, the air travel industry, let's put it this way. Like, they're building fast railroads and banning, like, short, you know, flights in Europe. You have to take a train now. And it's only gonna be worse later, okay? So, yeah. So, actually, there's so many points to discuss. I forgot to add, when I said that the real world is only for people who can afford it, it's exactly what I mean. Like, the elites is having fun in the real world, while peasants, they work like 24/7, and therefore the only thing they're left with is having fun, you know, online, you know, on the internet, right? And only the rich people would be having fun in real life, okay? That's the European concentration camp for you. So why are the Europeans also caring about food so much? Like maybe 10 or something years ago, there was this sort of mimetic story about how Europeans are like labeling, like certifying, licensing basically a proper banana shape. And people are saying, ha ha ha, look at the Europeans, they're so stupid. And also there's this meme about, you know, champagne, that you can only call something champagne if it's from, you know, Champagne or Champagne or whatever it's pronounced, the region of France. You can only call a Parmesan if it's from Parma or whatever. I don't actually know the regulations, but the idea is such, like, there is a whole bunch of these, you know, agricultural food style regulations in Europe. And there's actually a joke about this, about vaccines. See my short video about vaccines. That says that true vaccine only comes from Vaccin France, whereas everything else should just be called sparkling antidote, you know? So, yeah. So why are they doing this? I mean, it looks so stupid. It looks like a complete insanity. But they're doing it exactly for this reason, in order to have like a good proven product, you know? A good proven, you can't even call it a product at this point. It's just food, you know? Like, Europeans have been eating the same, like, Parmigiano cheese for, like, I don't know how long. Actually, I don't know how long, but at least 200 years, probably, right? I'm not mistaken. I don't know, actually. For a long time, let's put it this way. And if, now, you put various bad stuff, let's put it this way, into this cheese, you can no longer call it Parmigiano cheese, because the true Parmigiano cheese should have this and this and this and this properties. It should come from these specific farms, etc., etc., etc. That's why when you walk around in Europe, and then you walk around in America in cities, there's a big difference in how people look, you know, because people in Europe are eating food, which is food, and people in America are eating food rather, which is, it's resembling food. It's a food containing product, let's put it this way, right? Something like this, like nutrition containing products. That's what Americans are eating. And Europeans, like, they care about this stuff, alright? So yeah, that's yet another tool, just like the green energy, the reducing of pollution, etc., etc., in order to turn Europe in this sort of like a, how would you say it? I don't know the proper English word, sorry. This sort of elite vacation spot, but not vacation, actually, like, you know, residence. The residence of the world elite, let's put it this way, right? Something like this. Of course, within Europe, you'll have also patches of much less successful regions, let's put it this way, where mostly slaves live. I mean, somebody has to, you know, produce all the services that the elites would consume, etc., etc., etc. But that's a separate story. One thing before we end is that I wanted to mention this song by Neil Young from 1989, Keep on Rocking in the Free World, you know? Because this is like, notice how this song appeared almost right before the American hegemony peaked, right? Which is somewhere in the middle of 1990s, which was depicted in the movie Matrix, by the way, right? What does Matrix shows? It's actually the world at the peak of American domination, right? And the song, Keep on Rocking in the Free World, like, it's a song about American domination. It's the free world, right? And also notice how, what is rock and roll? It's American music, right? What is it about? It's about freedom. It's about protest, right? Something like that. It's about, like, you know, again, destroying the shackles of the old world, which was the European world, roughly speaking. And notice how shortly after the peak of American hegemony, so that would be 2010s roughly, when it was already clear that the American hegemony is falling, rock music died off, right? I think it's not a coincidence. It's actually parts of the same tendency. It's not like there is some deep conspiracy. It's more like the artists themselves, like, they're feeling it, you know, it's somewhere in the air. Like, in one of my previous videos, it was sometime long ago, we talked about this, how in order for artists to become successful, they need to sort of like feel these tiny hints, like, of this, you know, buzz in the air, of like this slight humidity in the air, and be able to condense it into a glass of water, you know, which a person can consume, or something to that effect. So the artists are feeling it, that rock music is not the way to go anymore. They can't even properly write it anymore, right? So in early 2010s, rock died, you know. Like, if you look at the top rock bands right now, these are all older bands. Like, there's no new bands at all after 2010s, you know. Early 2010s, in fact. So, yeah. The protest, the freedom, is not the way to go anymore. And again, kind of returning to a more abstract philosophical discussion, this aesthetic worldview is a legit worldview. So you can perceive the world through art, just like this. And again, aesthetic worldview, specifically applied to this music, popular music segment, says, you know, American music is kind of dead. There is still hip-hop, which is very popular, and there is country, which is very popular. But maybe very, very soon we'll see something else. I don't know. I mean, what I meant is that both hip-hop and country are also American. So in this sense, I'm kind of countering my own point, all right? It's also worthy of discussion, I feel like, all right? And to be fair, also, by the way, Young's song is also quite grim if you look at the lyrics. He probably also kind of felt that this coming peak in a few years will be followed by a downfall, right? Just like we said in the video about avoid success at all costs, I think I called it. I'm going to link it in the description. That why do you need to avoid success, avoid the peak? Well, because the peak, by definition, is where you were rising, and after it, you're falling. So it's not a good idea to have a peak, because you're gonna be falling afterwards. Just keep climbing. Avoid success at all costs, all right? So yeah, to sum it all up, after the establishment of European hegemony, everything would be regulated. Everything would be subordinated. The heart of the European Union is France and Germany, after all, right? And France is, like, if you look at how they tried to build their colonial empire back in the day, like, there's a pretty popular opinion, which is not entirely true, but to a degree it is true, that they've tried to make French people out of everyone, everywhere they've appeared, right? That's why we still have, like, a decent chunk of Southeast Asia and a huge chunk of Africa, Francophone. They all speak French, right? The biggest Francophone city is actually Kinshasa, I think, in Africa. It's not even Paris, all right? But yeah, so that they'll try to make everyone follow the rules, and that's French. We also have Germans, and do I need to talk a lot about Germans? Probably not. The Ordnung, the order, subordination. So yeah, we're moving towards a global concentration camp, towards some sort of permanent curfew, towards class segregation. Both regionally and within the same region, right? And the Chinese flu lockdowns were just a rehearsal, I'm afraid. The American world was the free world, which Neil Young sang about, and the European ruled world would be a non-free world, aka global concentration camp. And I don't think you can do anything about it. Like, the best thing people may hope to achieve is to, I don't know, become the part of the elite, I guess, or something to that effect. Or just go as far from civilization as possible and live off the ground, so to speak, live off the grid. I don't know, actually. I mean, this video wasn't about the recipe of how can you escape the European-dominated world. This video was about explaining why economics don't matter in the issues we are discussing, okay? The economy was the number one thing in the American-dominated world, which is coming to an end. Thank you for watching. The eons are closing. If you wish to support me, please consider joining my Patreon. That is patreon.com/philosopher. See the link in the description. Or if you have a scientific theory of your own and you'd like my help in developing it, please join my alternative science coaching program, also available through Patreon.